Hey everybody, my name's Brittany. I'm an addict. So I just want to share a little bit about myself. I grew up very in a loving home with two sisters, my parents. Pretty normal childhood. I rebelled at a young age. I remember getting my allowance, running the store, buying candy, and I needed to get my sister her allowance to go get more. I figured if I buy the little tiny penny candies, I get more than the 5 cent candies. So therefore, it looked bigger, and for me, more is everything. Like, I went to the store the other day, I saw my favorite chips. Of course, I had to buy 2 bags, not one, but two. So, but I just want to share a little bit about the hard times and how I hit my bottom, what it was like early on in recovery, and what it's like now. And that is an ongoing process. And it's not a race to the finish line, it is constantly learning and growing and self discovery. So for me, if I can change my life, if I can better myself and be a better person, and today I don't have the want, urge, or thought to use, that is today, and I try to live in just for today. Um, the thoughts do still come even at almost 12 years clean. So my clean date is November 1st, 2010. I did go into detox on Halloween of 2010. Um, but when I was just before I turned 15, I started dating a guy. It was fine for the first few months. And then I, I realized shortly after he had a temper. That's where I really got into doing drugs, selling drugs at school. I did drop out of high school as soon as I turned 16 and left. Um, but I have had fists thrown right beside my face, holes in walls, doors broken down. I have had couches flipped over at me. I've been knocked down the stairs. I got out of that when I was 19. Um, I tried at 17. I did have a gun pulled out, and it was either he was going to kill me or he was going to kill himself, and his blood would be on my hands, is what I was told. And I stayed for a few more years out of fear. It's not always easy to leave an abusive relationship. It was physical, emotional, sexual, and verbal. I did wake up many times finding out that they were with me and I was passed out, which is not okay. At the time, I thought, oh, they're my boyfriend. I was taught at the age of 15, you are there to please a man. And for me, I have issues saying no to men because of that. I am working on it now. I am working on my codependency and my people pleasing. Um, but if I was able to leave that relationship, um, then it's just reaching out for help, right? I reached out to my parents, and my dad stepped in, and I got out and came back home. But shortly after, I was broken into the sex trade. I went to a club. Uh, I was drugged. I woke up in a basement, chained to a bed for weeks. Multiple things happened. I'm not going to get into detail as I don't want to trigger anybody, but I was broken into the sex trade. Um, I remember I never received a dime of money. The driver did, and I was to do as I was told, and ask no questions. Um, and I did that right up until 2010. Um, and if I was able to get out of that, then there's hope, right? Um, I remember I went in for medical clearance because at 15 I was diagnosed with grand mal seizures. I was having 20 to 30 grand mal seizures a day. And I, I weighed 67 pounds. And I remember the nurse at the hospital looking at me and saying, "You're so young, you're so pretty. Why are you doing this to yourself?" I remember I threatened a mother if she couldn't shut her kid up, I would shut him up for her because my heart rate was going well over 180. And I'm asking the doctor to give me more drugs, to calm my heart rate down, to give me more drugs. That's the insanity of it. That is I wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop, right? A week before I hit my bottom, I reached out to my aunt. She kept offering to take me to detox. I said, no, my parents are on vacation. I will wait till they get home. My parents came home at about 4 in the morning. I told them I had a problem. And my dad said, well, this bottle's not for you. And he gave me this necklace instead. And my friend in the program gave me the Serenity ring that's on there as well. And my dad said, I hope it brings you luck. And I try not to take it off. I did lose it for about a year. I found it recently. So, and it reminds me of my bottom. It reminds me sitting, talking to the lady on the phone at Detox and saying what I was taking. I was taking 7 different drugs all at once. When I know I'm not going to be drug specific. But I do know, like she said, I had to go in for medical clearance because I was epileptic, right? And a side effect of coming off everything is having seizures. So I went to the hospital, and the doctor wanted me to go to the methadone clinic in Toronto to get clean. And I said, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop cold turkey. After I threatened another patient, he finally signed the letter, and I was able to go to detox. And that was in the afternoon of October 31st, 2010. I say my clean date is November 1st because I did use in the morning of on Halloween. That's why Halloween is very hard for me. I always remember my bottom and that hopelessness, that disgust in myself. Like at that point, I finally looked in the mirror and I looked at my eyes and I saw no soul. Like there was nothing there. It was emptiness. And I was smoking on hospital property, and an officer came up to me and he said to me, I'm going to have to fine you. And I told him to F off, and I'm waiting for my dad to take me a detox, and I don't want to deal with this no more. And I don't want to live. And he stood there and said so many kind words to me, did not give me a fine. And my dad took me to the detox. And, I'll never forget the tears in my mom's eyes. She didn't realize it was that bad. She didn't realize how much I was using. In detox, I was in the bubble, which is a glass window, and you have 4 staff watching you 24/7 with 4 little cots and a table with some snacks on it. They did give me boost drinks 4 times a day. The first 2 days I did hallucinate. I remember my first shower clean, and I felt so disgusted in everything I had done. I felt like, how can I forgive myself? How can I let go? I had sores on my lips. I'm still underweight. I do have a stomach condition, gastroparesis, which means my stomach muscle and my nerve does not work and process food. But, from going from 67 pounds up to 103, it's pretty good, but not quite there yet. But I'll get into more of that later. And I do say I'm a lot because I get nervous. But the thing is like, if I was able to escape a severely abusive relationship, and I hold no anger towards them, they're just a sick person dealing with their own mental health and addictions. I'm sure if they got help, they might be a decent person. I've learned to forgive. They did contact me last year. I did end up having to get police involved in that, and some warnings were sent out. But the thing is I've grown, and it's nonstop growing. Like, detox was tough. I was in that bubble for the full 7 days. I didn't get to go to the other room, which is their own bedroom, and there's a common area. And I remember my first meeting, and it was a medallion, and I'm like, how are these people laughing? How are they smiling? How are they not using for that amount of time? Like, I can't get that, right? And I was told, go to a home group, get a sponsor, work the steps. For me, I did do NA. It was an NA meeting. I was shown the guidebook I would have to do. I was also a day clean at the time, and I was overwhelmed. I said, I'm not studying for a degree. I walked away. I am not a hugger, and the hugging freaked me out. So I ended up going to CA, which is Cocaine Anonymous. And for the first year I did do CA, I did their booking program there through the 12 steps. I started at 3 weeks clean. I went into rehab the day before my birthday. I spent my birthday, Christmas, and New Year's in rehab. That's where I was diagnosed with PTSD. I also had a miscarriage early on in recovery, and I blamed myself for that. It was very hard for me, but I'll never forget the one counselor there. She made a huge impact in my life, and I kind of wish I stayed in touch with her. But the thing is I went back to that rehab for a meeting, and the nurse remembered me, and she said, we were chasing you down the hallway with oxygen, because I do have an eating disorder as well, because I didn't want to, and I wanted to just leave, right? And my parents at Christmas, they didn't visit me on Christmas, they didn't visit me on New Year's. They say, you are working on you. You are there to better yourself. They came up Christmas Eve and dropped off a Christmas gift for me. And for me, I think that was the best thing they did, right? For me, I needed tough love. I need the bluntness. If things are sugar-coated, I manipulate it. I justify it, and I do my will. And that's not the program. The program is doing my higher power's will. So when I miscarried in rehab, I did go to Homewood, and I was sent over to the hospital. I was not allowed to leave the property for the first 3 weeks. I was there for 6 weeks. And I remember the doctor, when I followed up, said, the likelihood of you ever being able to have more children is not there. And if you do, you will never carry to term. The damage is done. My organs were working at just a little over 50%. My brain function was only at like 42%. Now it's at 100%. My organs are at 100%. And that. But the thing is, it broke my heart, but I still stayed clean. I still went to meetings. I worked with my sponsor, and I did the steps. And I don't think if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I'm at, right? Moving forward, I do have a daughter now, but when I was 15, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, right? So now I do not have epilepsy. I was reassessed 4 years ago, and they summed it up to drug-induced epilepsy. Now, I did have seizures for the first year of recovery. So my neurologist, who I saw last month to follow up, he said, medically, there is no explanation as to why this went away. You were having 20 to 30 grand mal seizures a day. And now I have none. And my scans are all normal. And there's no medical reason. And that's why I don't question if there's a higher power. I don't question my spirituality. I'm very in tune with nature. That's where I find my peace and my joy, is just being in nature. But I had my daughter when I was just before 3 years clean. There were a lot of complications. I was a high-risk pregnancy, and that because I was still underweight and small. Now, also, I'll backtrack a bit before I get into that. Um, Getting into rehab was very hard. I went to 4 different facilities, and they all said the same thing. You have dual diagnosis, an eating disorder and addiction. Unless you get the eating disorder and do an eating disorder clinic, we cannot take you into rehab. And the eating disorder clinic said, if you don't get your addiction under control and do rehab for addiction, we can't take you into the program. And that's a flaw in the system that needs to be fixed. Homewood has both an eating disorder clinic and addiction. So I was put into the addictions clinic, but they also did combine in the eating disorder clinic with me. And I did have a nurse sit with me for the first 2 weeks every time I ate. I was banned from using the gym, and I was only allowed to do a limited amount of steps a day because I was to put on weight because I was severely malnutritious. So, but fast forward, I went back to high school because I dropped out at 16. I finished high school. I did my individual credits. That's where I met my daughter's father. Was through a mutual friend who I was going to school with someone, and I met him there, and we are good friends now. But the thing is I got into college in 2012 for integrated animation graphic design. I found out I was pregnant in January of 2013. And I was told the likelihood of me having kids was not there. I was told I was a high-risk pregnancy. I was petrified that entire pregnancy. I went for ultrasounds every 2 weeks. The last month I was placed on bed rest. She was 5 weeks early. I was induced due to medical complications. She stayed in the NICU for 23 days. During those 23 days, of course, the thoughts came. I could escape, right? But I reached out to other people in the program. I worked the steps, and I stayed clean through it, right? Because there's still struggles in recovery. Life happens. But in doing the steps, I have the tools, because before I had no choice. Now I have a choice because I've worked the steps. I know the solution to any problem I face in life, right? So I had my daughter the last 6 weeks before I was induced. I was placed on bed rest. And people, and this goes to show the unity of the fellowship, because at a year clean I did switch over back to NA. Now I do reference the AA book too, and I do reference the NA text. I am working codependency steps right now. I am also at the Women's College program. I'm waitlisted for the intense women recovering from abuse program from my past, because you know what, there's things there that I still need to deal with that the 12 steps can't help me with. I tried to work the 12 steps on it, but I need the counseling. I need to process through the trauma, because I do suffer severe flashbacks. I do have complex PTSD, and my anxiety is an end result of the complex PTSD. And I can't have a man walk behind me without freaking out and panicking and going into a flashback. And I have night terrors every night. But what I found is over the last year is the guided meditations before bed. I am finally sleeping 7 hours and not having flashbacks. I wish I did the program years ago. But the thing is if I can do that, if I can come from that and be where I am today, then anyone can. It's whether or not you're done with being sick and tired, that you're done with doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Because I'll still do that in relationships. I'll do that with, my daily life, being like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm expecting a different result. Guess what? I need to stop running on my will and run on my higher power's will. Because everything happens for a reason, even the hardships. Whether it's a life lesson to be learned, whether I'm in a conflict or don't like somebody, what is in them that I don't like about myself, because that is what my higher power is trying to show me, right? Now, my daughter does have some developmental. I'm not going to get into that because that's for confidential stuff. But, I now, because of recovery, I can fight to get her the help she needs. I can be a good parent. I did move back to Hamilton just before she was 1. I did my second year of integrated animation. Then there was some medical, and I took some time off. And that was a hard time. I don't even know how I managed it. I did coast while I was living in Hamilton. And the thing is I reached out to someone and said, something's got to change. I am miserable. I'm clean. I have time, but I am miserable. And I'm acting out character defects and holding on to resentments. And it wasn't good for anybody around me. So I went to a convention and I got back into it. And I got a sponsor and I worked the steps. Now I do have a new sponsor since then. I think I've grown the most during this pandemic. I had a choice when the pandemic hit. Either I'm going to isolate or I'm going to dive into my spirituality. I'm going to work on my steps and work on myself. And I called myself on everything I need to work on and chose to work on that. I also do Celebrate Recovery because I believe in God. That is my choice. Other people, when I first came into the program, it was Mother Nature. So, everybody's different on what they choose to believe in because it's your own concept. And for me, mine is love, caring, compassionate, graceful, kind, all those things. And what I just try to do is emulate those things within myself. I have a list of my top 5 character defects, and every morning I try to do the opposite, the spiritual principles of them. And I wake up in the morning and I do my 1, 2, 3. I say it out loud. My traumas, that is a daily thing. It'll never go away. I used to think I was a victim. Now I'm going more, I've survived it. It happened. It's not who I am. Just like me being an addict does not define who I am. There are a lot of components to who I am as a person, right? I write poetry. I do art. I went back. I got a partial degree in office admin. I really love doing art, and I'm a nerd. I love working in geometry and doing 3D modeling. So I went and did the Humber program, 3D animation VFX, and I did 2 years there. And I enjoyed it. Honestly, when I got my mental health under control, that was the first time in my entire life that I was successful at something. And, yes, life hits the fan, right? My sister's going through treatment for breast cancer right now, and that powerlessness that I want to fix it. Like, she was my biggest support. Her and her husband came to my first time speaking at a big event thing that went on, and they supported me. They came to my medallions. They sent their daughter up to visit me in rehab, right? Just amazing support. And that powerlessness, it comes, but I have the tools now to deal with it because life happens. And when I work a program, everything seems to just flow. I'm a planner. I love to plan in advance. So now I'm really trying to just live in the moment of today. And, I found myself addicted to social media. I was always on social media. Now I deleted all social media but Facebook, and I keep that because a lot of family. I go on, I post. I don't scroll through Facebook. I don't really read stuff. Sometimes I forget to look at my messages because, I want to be in the moment. And when I went camping this year, I decided I'm keeping my phone shut off and I am not looking at it. I am just being present in the moment. Because if I'm always on my phone, even just to capture a picture, I'm missing out on that moment I'm looking through a camera and not the moment itself. That pure beauty and joy, right? So my message is if I can get the program, if I can learn to apply the program, even during the hard times, and trust me, I act out, the thoughts come. I'd say a little while ago, a thought came that, hey, I was walking up this way, I could hop on the bus, go to this apartment, this unit, and get what my DOC. But I stopped and I'm like, whoa, I haven't had that thought in years. That's a good remember when of I am still an addict. But for me, it's you can have a lot of clean time, but do you have recovery? Are you working it? Are you being humble? Is your ego in check? Because that's what I have to ask myself every day. Am I acting out? Am I getting frustrated? Am I ill-tempered? Am I putting expectations on myself for perfection, right? Like 2 years ago, was diagnosed with stage 3 endometriosis, lesions, fibroids, and 3 different types of cysts. You know, and then I was just diagnosed with the stomach issue, gastroparesis, which is my stomach muscle does not process and break down food, and my nerve does not work properly. So I work with a dietitian now. I see a counselor. I do all the do's I need to do as well as my program, so that not only can I be a better person, not only can I work on my living amends to my family, but also so that I can be a great mom and just, enjoy life. Because, I only have one life, and it's being kind and being caring and compassionate and finding the good in everything. So I hope everyone has a great 24 and enjoys it. I was just inspired to share my experience a bit. Feel free to reach out if you want to. Have a great day.